Imagine a province, right, where the executive government is just swinging a broadsword, just aggressively pushing legislation, picking fights.
Right.
And meanwhile, the general public is, I mean, completely emotionally drained, just wandering aimlessly.
No, completely.
And the public services are just entirely gridlocked. So, you know, if you were looking at that society, you probably predict like an imminent collapse.
Yeah, you'd think the administration was weeks away from total catastrophic failure.
Exactly. But what if at the exact same moment, like behind closed doors, there was this silent, highly strategic intelligence operating? And what if that intelligence was quietly orchestrating, you know, one of the most historically massive, deeply rooted financial victories the province had seen in decades?
It's wild, honestly.
It's this bizarre, counterintuitive, and frankly fascinating contradiction that we're looking at today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks. Yeah, it is. It's the ultimate paradox of statecraft, really, because we're so accustomed to judging the health of a society by its, you know, its loudest, most public distress signals.
Right. If people are mad, things must be bad.
Exactly. We assume that if the people are miserable and the government is acting rashly, well, then the structural foundation just must be rotting. But the data we're analyzing today really forces us to decouple the public's emotional experience from the actual institutional reality.
And that data comes from a very specific, very precise methodology.
Yeah.
So for you listening, our mission today is to unpack a mundane geomantic chart.
Right.
And I want to stress, this isn't theoretical. We are treating this as a real working prediction. The chart was cast manually on July 16th, 2026.
Yep.
And the target is the Canadian province of Quebec. Specifically, we're forecasting the week commencing July 2026. So we're going to tear this chart apart, really sector by sector, to see the hidden architecture of the week ahead.
And to kind of set the table for the methodology here, we are utilizing Deborah Holding's Mundane house system.
Okay, great.
So for those familiar with traditional astrology or, you know, geomancy, you know that interpreting a chart for a nation or a province is fundamentally different from a personal chart.
Yeah, it's a completely different scale.
Right. In Holding's framework, the 12 houses of the chart, they represent 12 distinct organs of collective life.
Like the treasury, the courts.
Public morale, the civil service, the hidden opposition, all of it. And in this cast, the province of Quebec stands in as the querent, the subject of our inquiry.
I just want to pause on that for a second because it's a really crucial distinction. Like when we look at a personal chart, the second house might be your personal checking account. But in a mundane chart, it's the provincial treasury. It's the GDP. It's the entire banking sector. The scale is just massive.
It's a massive scale. That's precisely the point to keep in mind. And to add like a secondary layer of high-resolution data to this, we're supplementing the 16 core geomantic figures with an astro-geomantic overlay.
The Gerard tradition, right?
Yeah, exactly. The tradition mapped out by Gerard of Sabbioneta. He's often historically conflated with Gerard of Cremona, but modern scholarship heavily leans towards Sabbioneta for this.
Good to clarify.
Yeah. And this overlay system, it assigns classical zodiac signs and planetary dignities to the occupied houses based on the geomantic figures inside them.
So it gives us that extra flavor.
It does. It allows us to see not just the structural shape of the week, but the elemental and like planetary fuel that's burning inside those structures.
Which gives us this incredible like three-dimensional view. We have the 12 houses giving us the where, we have the geomantic figures giving us the what, and we have the Gerard overlay giving us the how. The planetary dignity kind of shows us how much power is actually behind these events.
Precisely.
But before we get into the weeds of all the planetary math, I really want to talk about my immediate reaction when I first, you know, laid this shield chart out and looked at the occupants.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's striking.
It really is. There is something deeply settled about the mathematics of this cast. It doesn't look like a standard, you know, administrative Tuesday in a mid-sized province.
Not at all.
It looked incredibly heavy, but also like wildly consequential.
Yeah, the term I would actually use for this is a threshold chart.
A threshold chart, okay.
Because in mundane forecasting, most weeks are just transitional. They're incremental. You know, you see minor fluctuations in the treasury.
Right, minor squabbles in the legislature.
Exactly. But this chart is not incremental. It represents a major passage between two distinct eras or states of being for the province.
Well, a threshold implies you're leaving one room and entering another, right?
Yeah.
But standing in the doorway is usually the most uncomfortable part.
And that discomfort, I mean, it is written all over this cast.
Right.
The overarching signature of this week in Quebec is that the popular experience, like how it literally feels to walk the streets, go to work, interact with the health system, or even just read the news, it's going to feel heavy, constrained, sorrowful even. But the institutional outcome, the actual structural permanence being locked into place by the government and its allies, is astonishingly fortunate.
It's so weird. Okay, let's unpack this architecture of discomfort. Because just looking at the visual layout of the shield, there is a massive structural anomaly.
The loops.
Yeah, the loops. We have 3 pairs of repeated figures framing the entire middle of the chart.
Right.
And in geomancy, when a figure repeats in a cast, it's not a coincidence.
No, it's a mathematical feedback loop. It creates this standing wave of energy.
Right.
When the same figure occupies 2 different houses, those 2 sectors of collective life, they're bound together. They're vibrating at the exact same frequency, sharing the same elemental resources, the same underlying crisis.
So let's map those loops out for the listener, just so we're all on the same page. First, we have the figure via, which translates to the road or the way.
Right, the fluid one.
Yeah, it's all single dots, entirely fluid. So via appears in House 1, representing the province itself, the public identity, and then it repeats in House 9, which represents the legal system, the higher courts, and like institutional philosophy.
Yeah.
So that's loop number 1.
And the second loop is emissio, which means loss or letting go. It's this energy of draining and downward motion.
It's always a tough one to see.
Very. And emissio sits in House 3, the sector of media, local transit, public communications. But then it repeats in House 5, which is the sector of public morale, culture, entertainment.
Which sounds like just a brutal combination for the public psyche.
It really is. And then we have the third loop, which is arguably the heaviest of them all.
Carcer.
Yeah. Carcer, the prison, or the enclosure. It's just absolute gridlock. And this sits in House 6, representing public health, labor unions, the civil service. And it repeats in House 8, the sector of debt, mortality, and crisis management.
Just think about the weight of that architecture for a second. The identity of the province and its legal framework are just wandering aimlessly with via. The media and the public morale are bleeding out and exhausted with emissio. And the health services and debt management are literally locked in an immovable prison cell with carcer.
Yeah, the entire center of gravity in this chart is characterized by wandering, losing, and being trapped.
Okay, but here's where I have to throw a wrench into this grim narrative.
Please do.
Because I'm looking at the terminal sequence. And in geomancy, the final calculation that gives you the ultimate verdict of the reading is the judge, right?
Right.
And the judge of this heavily trapped, bleeding, wandering chart is Fortuna Major.
The greater fortune.
The greater fortune. Literally the most powerful, unambiguously successful figure in the entire geomantic system. I mean, how do you reconcile that? Are the people just too exhausted to realize they've won the lottery?
I know. It's the central mystery of the chart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, how does a society that feels like it's suffocating actually produce a diamond of an outcome?
Exactly.
And to understand that, we can't just look at the broad strokes. We really have to walk through the houses methodically, starting with the most prominent angles.
Okay.
We need to look at the cross pillars of the province to see exactly where the friction is happening and, where the hidden machinery is actually working.
Let's do it. We're going to walk the angles, houses 1, 10, 7, and 4. The ascendant, the midheaven, the descendant, and the imam coli.
Perfect.
Let's start with House 1. As we established, this is the public mood, the national character of Quebec for the week, and it is occupied by via.
Right. So via is a water element figure. It is the most active, the most fluid, and therefore the most unstable figure in the entire geomantic system. So when it appears in the first house of a mundane chart, it tells us that the province lacks a fixed identity or like stable ground at this moment. Quebec is in motion.
Just kind of drifting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is observing, wandering, perhaps waiting for direction. There's no rootedness in the public character this week. It's a state of high flux. The public just doesn't know what it's supposed to be focusing on.
Which is fascinating when you compare it to the leadership. So let's look at House 10, which is the executive government. The premier, the ruling cabinet, the ultimate authority. And the figure here is pure, the boy, or the sword.
Pure is pure martial fire. It is impulsive, aggressive, forward-thrusting, and often quite rash.
Yeah.
Having pure in the 10th house means the ruling power is acting with intense confrontational posture. They're not acting like careful statesmen. They're acting like warriors charging into a breach. They're just pushing decisions through aggressively.
I want to challenge the strategy of that, though.
Yeah.
Because if the public in House 1 is via, which is water, fluid, directionless, and the government in House 10 is pure fire, swinging a sword, that's terrible governance.
It is.
You cannot cut water with a sword. The more aggressively the government slashes at issues this week, the more the public just disperses and flows around them. It's a complete mismatch of energies.
That is a brilliant elemental reading, honestly. The government is expending massive amounts of martial energy trying to force a result, but there is no solid resistance from the public to push against.
They're just tiring themselves out.
Yes. The public is just aimlessly absorbing the blows. And the irony is really compounded when you look across the aisle to House 7.
Right. House 7 is open opponents. In a mundane chart, this could be the federal government in Ottawa, opposing political parties or, foreign trade partners. Basically, whoever is sitting across the negotiating table from the Quebec executive.
Right.
And the figure here is Puella, the girl, or the fair one.
So Puella is Venusian air. It is harmonious, composed, diplomatic, and very pleasant. So picture the negotiating table, right? On one side, you have Quebec's executive government, completely embodying Queer. They're red in the face, banging their fists on the table, demanding action, acting entirely on impulse.
Right.
On the other side of the table, you have their opponents embodying Quella. They are perfectly calm, smiling, offering pleasantries, and just completely unbothered by the aggression.
It's the classic dynamic of, like, a teenager throwing a tantrum at a customer service desk and the representative just calmly smiling and saying, "I understand your frustration, sir."
Yes. That's exactly it.
The opponents aren't fighting back because they don't need to. They're just letting Quebec's government exhaust its own martial energy.
And we should probably interject a quick note on impartiality here for the listeners.
Oh, for sure.
In analyzing these figures, like calling the government aggressive or the opponents composed, we're strictly reading the objective, traditional geopolitical energies as presented by the geomantic math.
Right. We're not endorsing any political viewpoints or taking sides regarding the Quebec government's real-world policies.
No, not at all. We are simply acting as translators for the data the chart provides.
Absolutely. The chart says there is fire in the executive and air in the opposition. We just report the weather.
Exactly.
But let's look at the bedrock of that weather, which is House 4. This represents the deep roots of the province: land, housing, real estate, agriculture, and, historically the foundational structures of the society.
Right.
And sitting here is Caput Draconis, the head of the dragon.
This is a highly auspicious figure of ingress, of beginnings, of organic augmentation.
Okay.
It belongs to the earth element. So what this tells us is that underneath the public wandering and the executive sword swinging, the deep physical roots of the province are flourishing organically.
Wow.
Yeah, new foundational initiatives related to land, property, or core infrastructure are growing successfully. It's a very quiet, durable growth.
And it's not just growing, right? It is the absolute focal point of the chart's intention, because House 4 is also the location of the part of spirit for this week.
Yes, it is.
For you listening, the part of spirit is a specialized calculation derived from the points of the figures that reveals the deeper animating intention, the hidden why behind the chart.
Exactly. The province's deepest underlying motive this week isn't actually to fight, despite the government's loud, pure posture in the 10th house.
Right.
The profound animating intention of Quebec this week is foundational, durable growth. They want to secure the earth. The shouting at the top is just noise. The real work is happening in the roots.
Okay, so the roots are strong. Let's see if that strength translates to the bank accounts. We're moving to the financial axis. Houses 2 and 8.
Okay.
House 2 is the treasury, the banks, the financial markets, the literal cash flow of the province. And we have populace, the people or the crowd.
Populace is a figure of pure passivity. It is a multitude without a distinct direction. It acts as a mirror, basically reflecting whatever energy is around it.
Kind of like Via, but more static.
Very much so. Having populace in the House of Finance means the markets and the Treasury aren't driving any initiatives this week. They are entirely reactive.
Got it.
Financial conditions are neither spontaneously improving nor crashing on their own. They are just sitting there absorbing the general mood. The money is stagnant.
Stagnant money is never great, but, it gets much more complicated when you look across the axis to House 8. House 8 rules debt, systemic crisis, mortality rates, and shared financial obligations. And here is where we find our first carcer, the prison. the enclosure.
Yeah, Carcer is heavily Saturnian. It binds, it restricts, it delays, and it locks down.
Right.
So when Carcer occupies the sector of debt and crisis management, it means the province's liabilities are locked. Money isn't moving dynamically to solve problems. If there is a debt crisis or a systemic financial issue, there is absolutely no fast exit.
Wow.
It represents intractable bureaucratic constraint. The province is literally financially handcuffed.
But let me push back on this a little bit, because in mundane financial astrology, a restriction in the house of debt isn't always a bad thing, is it?
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Right. Could Carcer in the 8th house actually signify, like, a hardcore austerity measure? Maybe the government is aggressively locking down spending to stop the bleeding. It's a prison, yes, but maybe it's a prison for runaway debt.
That is a very sophisticated counter-reading, and honestly, in a different chart, I might agree with you.
But not this one.
Not this one. You have to look at the aspectual relationship. The 8th house is directly opposed to the 2nd house of the Treasury, which holds populace.
Right, the passive mirror.
Exactly. The Treasury is completely passive. It has no agency. If the government were actively executing a brilliant austerity plan, we would expect to see a figure of active acquisition in the 2nd house.
Oh, I see.
Instead, we see passivity locked in a standoff with a prison wall.
Man, and to make it even more confounding, the part of fortune is sitting in house 8.
Yeah, it is.
The part of fortune is the geomantic point of material rescue, of tangible benefit, luck, and physical success. How on earth does the province find material rescue in a house of debt that is completely locked down by a literal prison?
I often summarize this specific configuration as material rescue in a prison cell.
I'm going to need you to explain the mechanics of how one gets rescued inside a prison cell.
Well, the material help does arrive. The benefit is mathematically present because Fortuna is there. But because Fortuna is encased in Carcer, that help arrives with agonizing slowness.
Ah, the Saturnian delay.
Yes. It comes with immense bureaucratic friction, and it is delivered through incredibly tight, constrained channels. It is not a generous, spacious windfall where the province suddenly has a surplus.
Right, it's not a blank check.
Far from it. It is a fiscal rescue that is heavily hedged with terms, conditions, and oversight. You get the funding to manage the crisis, but you have to work within a straitjacket to access it.
Like receiving a massive federal bailout, but the oversight committee demands 1,000 pages of audits every single wink, and you can't freely spend a single dollar without their approval.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's salvation, but it feels like incarceration.
Exactly. The structural reality is salvation. The emotional experience is incarceration. Which brings us perfectly to the next axis, where the narrative of the province is being actively dismantled.
Right. Houses 3 and 9, the corridor of information and law. Let's start with House 3. This is media, public communications, local transit, the news cycle, and we have emissio, loss, letting go.
This is a bleeding wound in the chart. Emissio is a face of downward motion and energetic drain.
Yeah.
In the 3rd house, it signals that narrative coherence is dissolving, the government just cannot control its story, media fragmentation is extremely high, and the signals are degrading.
So the pure government in House 10 is shouting, but nobody's hearing it clearly.
Exactly. If the executive tries to launch a bold new communication strategy, it will immediately leak, fragment, and dissipate. The energy is simply draining out of the public communication sector.
From a practical standpoint, this looks like, a government press conference where the microphone cuts out, the talking points are instantly mocked on social media, and then 3 different ministers give contradictory statements to the press right after.
Yeah, they are losing the narrative.
They've lost the narrative entirely. And if you look across to House 9, the situation isn't really much better. House 9 governs the courts, higher education, the legal frameworks, and long-distance institutional philosophy.
Right.
And here we have V again, the road.
The exact same fluid, wandering figure that was in House 1.
Yes. So while the media is bleeding out coherence, the legal and institutional framework is wandering without a map.
It is. Via in the 9th suggests that the courts might be between major decisions or institutional authority is in a state of flux.
So no solid ground there either.
No. The laws feel highly interpretive and unstable this week. Neither end of the information and law axis has any solid ground. The province is losing its story on one end and wandering legally on the other.
Which means the public really has nothing to hold on to. They don't have a coherent news narrative, and they don't have a stable legal framework.
Nope.
Which naturally leads us to the morale of the province. Houses 5 and 11, morale versus the legislature. And this is where the chart's dark irony reaches its absolute peak.
Oh, it really does.
Let's look at House 5, public morale, culture, the collective spirit of the people. And we have our second emissio, loss.
The collective spirit is just draining. Public confidence is incredibly low. Cultural energy is dissipating.
Yeah.
When you combine this with the via in the first house, you get a populace that is not only wandering and directionless, but utterly exhausted by the wandering. It is a profound collective fatigue.
It's so sad. But then, pivot your eyes to House 11. House 11 is the legislature, the provincial councils, the government's allies, the actual machinery of passing laws.
Right.
And sitting right there, in stark contrast to the exhausted public, is Fortuna Major, the greater fortune.
I mean, this is the defining friction of the week. How do we make sense of this? The legislative bodies, the politicians sitting in their councils, they're experiencing massive, stable, enduring fortune.
Right.
They are having a structurally magnificent week. They are successfully passing laws, securing alliances, locking in highly fortunate long-term plans.
While everyone else suffers.
Exactly. The general population is completely drained.
It's the ultimate disconnect between the ruling class and the working class. Like, the government just passed a historic, sweeping piece of legislation that guarantees institutional prosperity for the next 50 years, right?
Yep.
They're literally popping champagne in the legislature. But the person on the street is too exhausted from inflation, from gridlock services, and from a fragmented media landscape to even care or celebrate.
Exactly.
The victory is real, but it has not translated to the emotional reality of the populace.
And that gridlock in the daily life of the populace is perfectly illustrated in our final pair of houses, houses 6 and 12, public services and hidden forces. So House 6 governs public health, labor unions, and the massive civil service apparatus. And here is our second cursor, the prison.
So, just like the debt sector, the health system and labor relations are completely paralyzed.
It is bureaucratic imprisonment, staff shortages, immovable union disputes, massive administrative bottlenecks. The civil servants are trapped in institutional inertia.
So, no one is getting anything done.
The system mathematically cannot move this week. If you need a rapid response from a public health initiative or a labor board, you will hit a brick wall.
Which makes the executive's pure aggression in House 10 even more absurd.
Oh, completely.
The premier can swing his sword and command the civil service to act all he wants, but the civil service is locked in a literal prison cell. They cannot execute the orders.
But here's the twist. While the public-facing civil service in House 6 is paralyzed, look at House 12.
The house of hidden enemies.
Right. Covert pressures, espionage, backdoor diplomacy, things happening securely behind closed doors. And we have Albus, the white, the clear.
Albus is such a fascinating figure. It's calm, it's intellectual, it's pure strategic clarity.
It is a phenomenal placement for the 12th house. Usually House 12 is where you find paranoia, hidden corruption, or like unseen disasters.
Right, it's usually a bad neighborhood.
Very. To find Albus here is incredibly rare. It tells us that the House of Hidden Things is being managed with supreme quiet intelligence. Whatever the province is doing behind closed doors, whether it's secret trade negotiations, covert administrative actions, or high-level backdoor diplomacy, it is being handled with absolute wisdom and clarity.
I love the duality of this government. In public, in House 10, they are pure rash, loud, aggressive teenager picking fights. But behind closed doors, in House 12, they are Albus, a calm, strategic mastermind, playing 4D chess.
The public bluster is entirely a mask, or at the very least, it's only the surface turbulence of the water. To understand where this bizarre, contradictory mix is actually leading, the aggressive public posture, the paralyzed services, the exhausted public, and the secret mastermind operations, we have to look at the chart's terminal sequence.
The ultimate synthesis. So in Geomancy, the first 12 houses are generated by the 4 mothers, the daughters, and the nieces.
Right.
But those figures then combine mathematically to form the terminal sequence, which gives us a narrative arc of time. So to the right witness, which is the beginning of the situation, the left witness, which is the unfolding or middle passage, the judge, which is the final verdict, and the reconciler, which tells us how that verdict actually settles into reality.
Let's walk through that flow of time. The right witness, representing how Quebec enters the week, is Albus.
So they enter the week utilizing that same quiet strategic restraint we saw in the 12th house. They aren't coming out swinging on Monday morning. They are watching, calculating, maintaining clear heads.
Yes, cautious intellectual deliberation. But as the week progresses, the situation transitions into the left witness, representing the unfolding narrative. And the left witness is Tristitia, sorrow, heaviness, downward pressure.
Man, that is a brutal middle passage. How does strategic clarity albus devolve into sorrow justitia?
It is the Saturnine reality of the chart pressing down. Remember the double carcer in health and debt.
Right? Well,
Remember the double emissio draining public morale. As the week unfolds, the bureaucratic weight of those locked systems starts to crush the public effort. Strategic clarity meets immense institutional resistance.
so reality just sets in.
Exactly. The delays compound, the emotional climate becomes incredibly somber. This is the exact moment when the public feels the emissio drain most acutely. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It feels like a heavy, impossible slog.
Okay, so the week starts smart, gets incredibly depressing, but then we mathematically combine albus and tristitia to produce the judge, the final verdict.
Yep.
And the judge is Fortuna Major, greater fortune.
This is why geomancy is so profound. Despite the heavy, sorrowful unfolding, the mathematical and structural outcome of the week is unambiguously favorable. It is large, stable, enduring success.
So the doom and gloom was just a phase.
Exactly. This is not a crisis week that ends in a catastrophic crash. It is a grueling, heavy, exhausting week that ultimately yields a massive institutional victory.
But I want to pull back the curtain on that victory, because the judge isn't the final word. We have the reconciler.
The reconciler, yes.
You calculate the reconciler by combining the judge, Fortuna Major, back with the figure in the first house, which is Via. It tells you how the province actually integrates this massive fortune. And the reconciler is Fortuna Minor, the lesser fortune.
Which is a vital nuance. Fortuna Minor is a conditional fortune. It is fire, like its big brother Fortuna Major, but it is an external, fast-burning fire. It tells us that the benefit is real, but it is not self-sustaining.
Meaning Quebec doesn't just get to put its feet up and coast on this victory.
Exactly. The province must actively work to hold what it has won. If they stop pedaling, the bicycle falls over.
Right.
The fortune must be maintained through continuous conscious effort. The victory is secured, but the maintenance of that victory will require immediate and ongoing labor.
Okay, so the outcome is great, but the public is miserable, and they still have to keep working to maintain the win. I have a mechanical question. Where exactly is the pivot point in all of this?
What do you mean?
What is the specific trigger that flips this depressing Tristitia middle passage into a Fortuna Major outcome?
For that, we look at one of the most revealing special structural factors in geomancy, the way of points.
The way of points. This is where we trace the hidden vitality of the chart, right?
Right.
We look at the judge, and we trace the path of the points back up through the chart to see which house is secretly generating the outcome.
Precisely. And in this chart, we have a massive anomaly. The way of points traces up from the judge and ends simultaneously in two different houses. It double terminates.
Which is mathematically quite rare. Where does it land?
It terminates in House 11, the legislature and allies, where we have Fortuna Major, and in-house 12 hidden things and covert pressures, where we have Albus.
Oh, that is staggering.
It really is.
The chart is literally giving us the blueprint. The root cause of the week's fortunate outcome is a direct, hidden interplay between the official legislative bodies passing laws in House 11 and the secret, behind-the-scenes intelligence operating in House 12.
It is a coordinated maneuver. The true power this week isn't with the loud, aggressive premier in House 10. It isn't with the passive financial markets in House 2.
Right.
The true power is a backdoor deal. It's a quiet alliance between the legislature and the intelligence or covert administrative branches.
It's the swan on the lake analogy perfectly realized.
Oh, I like that.
Above the surface, the government is honking, flapping its wings, swinging its sword. The water's choppy, the media is fragmenting, the public is exhausted and losing morale.
Yes.
But beneath the dark water, completely hidden from public view, the swan's legs are paddling perfectly in sync. The hidden Albus intelligence is working directly with the House 11 legislature to guide the entire province to safety.
That is structurally exactly what is happening. The real work is being done at the border of official policy and private intelligent action. And if we remember the part of spirit in House 4 with Capricornus, their ultimate goal is foundational, durable growth.
Right.
They are building something real at the roots, even if the public is too distracted by the choppy water to see it.
To add the final, high-definition layer of texture to this below-the-surface activity, we have to bring in the Gerard of Sabbioneta overlay.
Yes, let's do it.
We've looked at the geomantic figures, but Gerard's tradition allows us to map classical zodiac signs and planetary dignities onto these occupied houses. This shows us the cosmic fuel injecting into these sectors.
Exactly.
Let's look at what the classical planets are doing, starting with House 1, the province itself.
The Gerard overlay is where the chart's tensions become just crystalline. In House 1, based on the geomantic figure Via, we have the sign of Cancer and the ruling planet Mercury.
So Cancer is a water sign. It's deeply emotional, protective, and inward-looking. And Mercury is the planet of intellect, communication, and caution.
In traditional dignity, Mercury in Cancer has no major essential strength. It's peregrine, or neutral. But it perfectly confirms and expands our reading of Via. The province is in motion, but emotionally, the public is deeply protective. They are retreating into their shells. They are using their intellect, Mercury, to watch and wait rather than acting boldly. They are defensive.
That makes perfect sense. Let's jump to the bedrock. House 4. The deep roots, land, housing, where we had Caput Triquonis and the part of spirit. According to Gerard, we have the sign of Libra and the planet Venus.
And here we hit our first massive amplifier. Venus is the traditional ruler of Libra. Therefore, Venus is in her domicile. She is at maximum planetary strength.
Wow.
Yeah. In the house of land, real estate, and foundational negotiations, having Venus in domicile is incredible news. Venus brings harmony, attraction, and highly favorable agreements.
So it's supercharging the house.
Exactly. This takes the organic growth of Caput Triquonis and elevates it to a state of high cosmic dignity. Whatever real estate, agricultural, or foundational deals the province is making this week, they are blessed with maximum diplomatic and financial grace.
Okay, but now we hit the danger zone. House 5, public morale, where we saw the drain of Amicio. The overlay gives us the sign of Scorpio. And because of the specific geomantic math, we have two planetary influences here, Mars and the Moon.
This is the most complex and revealing planetary signature in the entire chart. Let's break down the traditional dignities. Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. So just like Venus, Mars is in domicile. It is operating at absolute peak power.
And Mars is the god of war. It's fierce, intense, uncompromising energy driving the public sphere.
Yes, but the moon, which astrologically represents the emotional state of the public, is in Scorpio.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Scorpio is the exact opposite of the moon's sign of exaltation, which is Taurus. Therefore, the moon is in fall. It is severely debilitated.
That is a devastating combination for the public psyche.
It perfectly explains the mechanical why behind the Amicio drain. You have this intense, forceful, warlike martial energy driving the public sphere, but the emotional life of the public, the moon, is wounded, suppressed, and entirely incapable of sustaining that aggressive current.
They're just being dragged along.
Pretty much. The public is highly energized by the martial environment, but they are in deep psychological pain underneath it. They are burning out.
That paints such a vivid, tragic picture of the populace. They're forced to march, but their spirits are broken.
Yeah.
Let's move to House 6. Public services, health, labor. The house completely locked down by the carcer prison. The overlay gives us the sign of Sagittarius, and we have the sun and Jupiter.
And again, we see profound planetary dignity. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. Jupiter is in domicile here, making it one of the most powerful planets in the chart.
Okay.
Jupiter is the great benefic. It wants to wildly expand. In the House of Labor and Health, Jupiter brings institutional optimism, a desire for vast policy generosity, and massive funding initiatives.
But wait. The geomantic reality on the ground is carcer, the prison. How do you have the planet of massive expansion trapped inside a 6x6 prison cell?
This is the fascinating tension of the week. The planetary energy of Jupiter desperately wants to expand the health and labor sectors. The government likely has the money or the policy desire to grow these institutions.
Right.
But the structural, mundane reality on the ground carcer has locked the cell door. The administrative gridlock is physically preventing the Jupiterian expansion from actually taking effect this week. The money is there, the optimism is there, but it is stuck in an absolute administrative bottleneck.
It's like trying to fire a bazooka inside a closet. The energy is massive, but the container is entirely restrictive.
Very well put.
Taking a step back, having three classical planets at maximum strength, Venus in Libra, Mars in Scorpio, and Jupiter in Sagittarius, all operating in a single mundane cast. It's highly unusual, isn't it?
It is a remarkable concentration of dignified planetary power. It tells us that the forces at work in Quebec this week are not fleeting or superficial. They are very real, exceptionally well-grounded, and operating with immense historic weight.
The stakes are high.
It's very high. The structural victories are massive, even if the public is too emotionally wounded by that moon and fall to appreciate them.
I'm going to take a breath here. because we have unpacked a staggering amount of data.
We really have.
We have an aggressive, sword-wielding executive government acting on impulse. We have a wounded, exhausted public wandering without a narrative. We have massive institutional systems like health and debt locked in total bureaucratic gridlock.
Right.
But simultaneously, we have incredibly high planetary dignities, hidden backdoor intelligence operating flawlessly, and a massive foundational fortune waiting at the end of the week.
It is a densely layered reality, that's for sure.
So let's pull all of these threads into a unified forecast. Let's distill the week's dominant storyline for the listener. In every geomantic reading, something must be sacrificed to achieve the outcome. What is the sacrifice for Quebec this week?
The province must sacrifice the illusion of narrative control. With the double emissio draining the media in House 3 and public morale in House 5, any attempt by the government to force a coherent, triumphant public relations campaign will completely fail.
They just can't spin it.
No, they cannot control the story this week. The media will fragment, the public will not buy the spin, and the administration needs to let that illusion of control go.
And the game. What are they actually winning beneath all that bad PR?
Foundational generational growth. Caput Draconis and Venus in domicile in House 4, combined with the part of spirit.
Right, the roots.
Yes. Something very real, very durable, and highly lucrative is being built at the roots of the province. This involves real estate, land management, core agricultural agreements, or foundational infrastructure.
And the hidden danger. Where's the trap that the government might step into?
The trap lies entirely in the friction between the impulsive executive and the locked administrative systems. The danger is the pure executive in House 10 making bold, aggressive, sweeping announcements, completely blind to the fact that the civil infrastructure, the double carcer in 6 and 8, is totally locked up.
But they write a check their body can't cash.
Exactly. The systems are structurally unable to absorb the friction of the government's ambitions. The premier might promise a massive new Jupiterian health initiative on Tuesday, but the locked carcer system simply cannot physically deliver it this week. It will result in severe institutional embarrassment if they push too hard.
So if you had to deliver a single-sentence verdict for the week of July 20, 2026 in Quebec, what is the ultimate takeaway?
I would say Quebec's government charges forward with martial conviction while its administrative systems quietly lock and its public spirits drain. But a highly fortunate, hidden institutional hand is playing below the surface, and the province will emerge from the week structurally vastly better than the week felt while it was happening.
For you listening, if you are living or doing business in Quebec this week, how do you translate this esoteric data into actionable advice? First, watch for legislative developments in the background. House 11 holds the fortune.
Definitely.
Pay attention to what is quietly passing through the councils. Second, expect loud, aggressive executive announcements that sound terrifying or ambitious, but understand they probably can't actually be executed right now because of the administrative gridlock.
Right.
And above all, trust the hidden institutional machinery. Do not get swept up in the heavy, draining public mood because the structural outcome is secure.
Let the surface turbulence happen. Let the media fragment. Keep your eyes entirely on the foundational winds being secured in the background.
Remember the final arc of the week. Albus in, Tristitia through, Fortuna Major out. A week of quiet, strategic beginnings, a very heavy, sorrowful middle passage, and genuine lasting fortune at the end, provided you are willing to maintain it with Fortuna Minor.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over something that extends far beyond just the borders of Quebec or the politics of 2026.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Geomancy, as a philosophical practice, constantly forces us to separate our emotional experience of an event from the structural reality of it. This chart states with absolute mathematical clarity that the people of Quebec will feel terrible this week. The sorrow of Tristitia, the drain of Amicia, the psychological wound of Moon and Fall.
It's just heavy.
But structurally, objectively, the province is securing a massive, durable victory with Fortuna Major and Venus in Libra.
The feelings simply do not match the facts.
Exactly. So consider your own life, your own career, your own relationships. How often do we confuse a difficult, heavy emotional passage with a structural failure?
Oh, wow.
How often do we think everything in our life is falling apart, when in reality that heaviness is simply the painful, exhausting friction of a lasting foundation being built? Sometimes the most fortunate, durable outcomes require us to wade through the deepest exhaustion to secure them.
That is a profound lens to view the world through. Next time you look at the dashboard of your life for your business and you see all those erratic, heavy red lights flashing, take a breath. You might just be looking at a muddy, uncomfortable X-ray of something beautiful and permanent taking root. Keep your eyes on the deeper currents. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.